to round 12 coverage of Grand Prix Phoenix. I'm Brian David Marshall. I'm in the booth with Jake Van Lunen, and you are looking at Tate Donovan on your left. Gives a big smile to Matt Nass on your right. Tate's smiling because he's playing green, white taxes, which is his play on the Death and Taxes archetype from Legacy. Jake Van Lunen, what are these decks trying to do as Tate Donovan starts off with an Ether Vial?
So Tate Donovan's deck is essentially trying to mana deny decks that require, more lands to do the exciting things they want to do via Leonin Arbiter, Ghost Quarter, those types of effects. Then he just has a bunch of threats that are really good against different decks. Voice of Resurgence, very good against control decks, really good against decks that just want to kill things without exiling them. Mirror Crusader gets him a lot of free wins against players that only have black removal. Scavenging Ooze can interact with the opponent's graveyard. Just a lot of ways to beat specific strategies within a cohesive, aggressive shell.
Here we see Matt Nass opening up with Chromatic Star, Mox Opal, and a Forest. Now, Scavenging Ooze seems like a card that could give Matt Nass fits as he tries to go off with his combo of, which involves recurring creature artifacts and recurring cheap artifacts. And then if Tate can get into a position where he's able to exploit, have green mana open on that Scavenging Ooze, it could be really difficult for Matt to find a window to go off. And here we see a card that is also going to give Matt fits, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben.
Yeah, and I think this is the key card for Tate Donovan in a matchup like this. Matt Nass, the creatures in his deck are Scrap Trawler and Mirror Retriever. Besides that, he's playing a bunch of very inexpensive artifacts that are all going to cost additional mana to cast now. That Mox Opal does not tap for mana yet, and it's going to be really hard for Matt Nass to get into this game underneath a Thalia.
Now, we've talked a lot about decks you've seen a lot of in Modern throughout this weekend. How much of this type of deck have you seen, the Death and Taxes variants?
So these Death and Taxes variants have more recently been playing the Eldrazi cards in them. You're playing a lot of lands that produce colorless mana anyway, so a lot of players like to include things like Thought-Knot Seer in the deck. This is a more traditional build of the strategy. And, I have not seen much of this, and I've been playing a lot of Modern recently. Really exciting that Tate Donovan has piloted this to a 10-1 record thus far.
Here we see Matt Nass casts an Engineered Explosives for 1.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, he has to announce it for 0, but then he has to pay an additional mana for the Thalia, and because he paid green mana for it, it still comes into play with 1 Sunburst counter on it. A very interesting thing there.
And he's looking to get that Ether Vial off the board at this point?
Or
just looking to get to Metalcraft?
Yeah, I think he's more looking just to hit Metalcraft to turn on that Opal so that he can kind of fight through the Thalia here on the other side of the table.
So there's the Leonin Arbiter now for Tate Donovan. Temple Garden comes into play tapped. He's in no hurry here, but he's starting to assemble all the pieces of his lock.
Yeah, and important to note that, Matt Nass, he has Inventor's Fair in his deck, so not only will that Leonin Arbiter interact well with Tate Donovan's Path to Exiles and Ghost Quarters, but that Leonin Arbiter also going to mean that if Matt Nass does attempt to activate Inventor's Fair, it's going to cost him an additional 2 mana to do so.
Uses Ether Vial to bring in a Voice of Resurgence at the end of the turn, gets to untap and attack for 6. 2 more turns and Matt Nass is dead if nothing else changes. And he is really constrained on his ability to deploy his spells here.
Yeah, the Thalia has really just taken all of the wind out of Matt Nass's sails. Now, with that Mirror Crusader in Tate Donovan's hand that can come down at instant speed, a Horizon Canopy ready to be sacrificed, it seems like Tate Donovan could end this game on the next turn or the turn after, depending on what happens.
Does sacrifice the Horizon Canopy, activates the Ether Vial. He's just curved out pretty nicely with that. Here's the Mirror Crusader, and Matt Nass is going to scoop him up. He doesn't get to play Magic. Death and Taxes, inevitable.
Yeah, the 2 things in life
that
one cannot avoid.
And, of course, the deck name comes from the idea that the third thing that you can't avoid is White Weenie.
Yes.
I think that was the origins of the name. But
25 years we've been playing against that deck.
Yeah. Wow, that deck looked great. I think
Yeah, Thalia looked really great.
Yeah, Thalia is really, especially a deck that's running. We've seen Matt, we've seen Sam Party playing this deck. They don't have a ton of land in play generally. They're really ripping, using a 1-mana artifact to replace a 1-mana artifact sometimes as they cycle through their deck. When you have to pay 2 for that 1-mana artifact, it becomes a little more challenging to get any kind of, flow going for your deck.
Absolutely. And, Matt Nass's plan A in a matchup like this, post-board, is really just to hope that Tate does not draw the Thalia. However, Tate does draw the Thalia. He has a few answers post-board. He also has the Engineered Explosives that we saw in the first game. He was very constrained on mana there. Normally, he is able to rifle through his deck much more quickly and, find the mana sources that he needs to kind of operate through Thalia to some degree, although Thalia is still just going to be the very best card against him out of Tate's deck.
Now, after sideboard, lots of stuff going on for Donovan. Tate here as well. He's got Qasali Pride Mages. He's got Engineered Explosives if he decides that's something he wants to do. He's got Stony Silence.
That's about the best card you could ask for in a matchup like this.
He also has 2 Rest in Peace. He could literally, he could bring in, 2, 4, 7 cards here that all would shut Matt Nass down. Now, will Matt Nass pivot to his strategy where he's trying to bring in something like a
Wormcoil engine?
Yeah.
I think Matt might be forced to do something like that. It's really important, though, that Matt Nass has some sort of plan post-board for the Stony Silence. Matt may not know that he needs to bring in Nature's Claim. Sure, his opponent has a card like Ether Vial in Game 1, but he does have white sideboard cards, but Matt really needs to be prepared to deal with these artifacts because even if he brings in Wormcoil Engines, it's going to be really hard to cast that if there's a Stony Silence on the other side of the table. His normal answer to these types of hate cards is Engineered Explosives. That does not work against Stony Silence.
Now,
Tate Donovan even has Rest in Peace.
Matt's played a fair amount of Legacy in his life, and so I'm sure he has some experience with this, playing against this archetype.
Mm-hmm.
So, knows that, these types of weapons are available out of the sideboard, right?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the biggest draws to a deck like Green-White Taxes that Tate is playing is just how impactful his sideboard cards are. You look at these sideboard cards, things like Stony Silence, Rest in Peace, Mark of Asylum, Auriok Champion. Like, these are cards that are just going to win the game by themselves against decks that make up reasonable percentages of the modern format. And, the thing is normally when you're playing these colors, some of these sideboard cards you can't play because they also hurt you. They're incidentally strong against you. But Tate Donovan's plan is fair enough that he gets to play all of these super powerful sideboard cards.
Do you see a Thalia in hand for Tate Donovan here? And we are underway. Ancient Stirrings leads things off for Matt Nass. Now the question is, will he bring in those Nature's Claims? And did Tate bring in more targets for those Nature Claims?
Yeah. And I think there's a really interesting game going on here post-sideboard where you need to figure out exactly what it is that your opponent is trying to do. Tate Donovan is not fully aware yet of what Matt Nass's plan is, by the way. He did not see a ton in the first game. And though some of the cards that he saw would lead him to believe it's Ironworks combo, you really didn't see enough of what's going on to make a 100% assumption there.
So no second land here for Matt Nass.
And when your opponent does not play a second land, Thalia, Guardian of Throbbing feels really nice on the second turn.
It's going to come down right now. And as is a second copy of Noble Hierarch.
And those Noble
Now,
Hierarchs.
we do know there's a Pyrite Spellbomb in hand for Matt Nass. But he's got to find a second land before he can play it to kill this Thalia. Has to pay 1 mana for that Mox Opal.
Yep.
Wow. So this Green-White Taxes deck looks like it's found a perfect opponent.
Yeah, and I think it's found a really good window for the format also. I think this weekend is a really good weekend to play a deck like this. This deck looks really nice. Like, there are at least 8 cards in this deck that any of the major players in the current Modern format just never, ever, ever want to see. That's really exciting to me.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, a couple, great sideboard options against a lot of the top decks to just reinforce that position.
Yeah, I mean, this is a deck where, he has enough powerful cards where he can steal some game 1s, but his game 2 and 3s are incredible against this field this weekend. Great deck choice here by Tate Donovan, and really interesting card choices. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I mean, Aether Vial is a card, you think back to the Players' Championship in 2012, Shota Yasuoka playing that crazy Eternal Witness deck, but, Aether Vial looked like such a strong card. And, we haven't seen a ton of it. I mean, it obviously shows up in the Merfolk decks and a couple other decks, but we haven't. Oh, wow, look at that. Just going to keep Matt Nass off of, multicolored mana here.
And I believe
Just Ghost Quartering twice here.
Yeah, Tate probably a little bit frustrated that Matt Nass has multiple basics in the deck. I don't think he was necessarily expecting that.
Let's see how many you got.
But I don't think he's overly frustrated considering his situation in this game right now.
Now, if he had a Leon and Arbiter, those would have been basically wastelands.
Exactly. Even better, Strip Mine.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. And you know what? Matt Nass is discarding to hand size here. So, Horizon Canopy gets sacrificed. Another card deep for Tate Donovan, who just attacks with that Voice of Resurgence. Has 2 Exalted triggers from Noble Hierarch. So, that's working in chunks of 4. And Matt Nass extends the hand. He did not get to play Magic for 2 straight games.
Yeah.
And even though he didn't have a lot of land in play, it's easy to look at that and say, oh, Matt Nass got mana screwed there or something. But that's not what happened because his deck operates pretty land light. He ends up ripping through his deck with those 1 mana artifacts.
Yeah.
And that's he's not able to do that when it's going to call, you're going to get 1 mana and then you have to pay 2 for the next one. And the Thalia is just ready to foil that. That was very impressive looking from Tate Donovan, and Matt Nass and Sam Party and those guys felt like they had a really great deck for this tournament. And one of the, this is exactly the type of deck they were really looking to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, at the Pro Tour we saw Thalia in Humans, and Thalia was really one of the reasons why Humans was so successful there and why so many people wanted to play that deck. But the format has evolved so that people are more prepared for Humans. We're seeing a lot of sweepers here this weekend. We're seeing cards like Settle the Wreckage and Supreme Verdict. And Tate's deck is much more resilient to those types of cards with things like Voice of Resurgence, with his Aether Vial, with his Restoration Angel. And as a result, I think his deck choice is incredible here.
Yeah, I mean, he even has 2 Wrath of God in his sideboard for some of those decks that are going to deploy wider to the board than he does. So, a really great choice. I'm curious to talk to him and find out a little bit about what made him go down this road. He, lists himself as the deck designer here. So I'm wondering if he's a legacy player. Let's hear from Tate Donovan and find out a little bit more about this deck. Hey, Tate Donovan. Brian David Marshall here with Jake Van Lunen in the booth. We just watched you destroy Matt Nass there.
Yeah.
And is that pretty much, was that pretty much the game plan when you were drawing up this deck?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what he was on or anything like that, but the game plan is just in everywhere, stick a Thalia and then strip mine them. So people need lands to play Magic, and that's all. The best way to fight is blow them all up.
So now Death and Taxes is a deck name you wrote down on your sheet.
Yeah.
Are you a Legacy guy?
Yeah, I play Legacy Death and Taxes as well.
Okay, and so you're like, and is this what you always play in Modern, or?
Yeah, I got some fun decks, I got some pet decks and stuff like that, but I pretty much blow up lands as frequently as I can because it's pretty fun. So that's always the plan, yeah.
So what are the matchups you're looking for with a deck like this?
I went green. I was on Mono White for a while. I went green just for the voices because I think they're super important right now with Jund everywhere. But The deck list I'm looking to hit is anything but humans, or anything like they can go wider than I can, because those are usually like troublesome. But like control-based matchups, Jund and stuff like that, people who are trying to cheat against the format, your matchups are usually pretty good.
And now, one of the things I thought was really cool about your deck is how powerful your sideboard was. Over the course of this weekend, do you think you're winning a much greater percentage of game 2 and 3s than you are necessarily of game 1s?
Absolutely. You're a halftime team. So like your sideboard counts for a lot. Because like game 1, you're just kind of like figuring out what they're on, or if you're like already losing, just like ghost courting aggressively, trying to figure out like a basic land count. And then you gear up for like 2 games where you're usually always on the back foot. But that's where you kind of want to, like, all the enchantments are like power hitters and stuff like that. So that's where you want to be anyway.
Yeah, now, with these Taxes decks in Modern, more recently we've been seeing most of them as Eldrazi versions of the deck.
Oh, yeah.
You're playing a green-white version of the deck that doesn't play those Eldrazi cards, and it looks really, really good on paper.
Thank you.
Was there something besides Voice of Resurgence that drew to that, or was it really just Voice of Resurgence being strong against these removal-heavy Jund decks?
There's that, and I never really liked the Eldrazi versions because they don't play Tech Edge, and I definitely just want to blow up more lands. So even though like Displacer seems really good, and like your Thought Knotting and like Reality Smasher, which are like very good cards, I'd rather blow up lands. So we're always on Tech Edges and Ghost Quarters, trying to get as close to 8 disruption spells as far as lands go as possible.
All
So
right.
7 there, but yeah.
Yeah. All right, Tate. I mean, making the deck look good. I'm always happy to see Aether Vial doing well in the
we're
feature
trying.
match area. All right, let you go and continue to be the Greg Popovich of this tournament with your second half team, Green, White, Death, and Taxes. Thanks a lot, Tate.
Thank you.
That was great. We're
Awesome.
a halftime team. That's my quote of the tournament so far.
Sam, yeah, that was awesome.
I play this deck. I want access to these great sideboard cards, and I want to be able to just adjust the dial to whatever Matt Nass is bringing to the tournament. I want to be able to beat him. Whatever Sam Black is bringing to the tournament, I want to be able to beat him. You know, that's just great job there by Tate Donovan. All right, we got a couple quick commercial messages, and then we'll be right back with more Magic here in round 12 of Grand Prix Phoenix. Welcome back to the booth. Brian David Marshall here with Jake Van Lunen. We just watched a pretty exciting match in terms of watching this green-white Death. Not so exciting for Matt Nass's side of the table, but certainly exciting to watch that Death and Taxes deck go to work. But we have more Magic to show you. We've got a time walk match. Let's head down to the floor and see what is in store for us here in Game 1. We've got Robert Graves playing Kiki Chord. He's at 10-1, and he's playing against Justin Baire, who's also 10-1, and he is playing the Humans deck. And, you may have seen that deck called 5-color Humans in the past, but there's enough. There's 4-color Humans, 5-color Humans. It's just Humans.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. There are two major differences in the Humans list, and they don't really come down to whether or not it's 4 or 5 colors so much as they come down to whether or not the deck is playing Ether Vial or Collected Company. And some versions play Ether Vial, some versions play Collected Company. Jerry Thompson this weekend was playing Collected Company and Bloodbraid Elf.
Oh, wow.
In Humans, which I thought was a really interesting
What
take.
What version is Justin playing?
Justin is playing the Ether Vial version. So better against more controlling decks, not quite as powerful against the mid-range decks or the opposing creature decks.
Here we see Champion of the Parish get a counter from the Noble Hierarch, and now it attacks in for 3 here on turn 2. And there's the Ether Vial. We were just talking about it, Jake.
And the difference in power level between a turn 1 and or turn 2 Ether Vial is pretty massive.
Now, Robert Graves, 1 land, but does have 3 mana-producing creatures in play now, able to play a Noble Hierarch and a second copy of Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, Justin access to 4 mana already, and maybe even a 5th if he has another 1-drop to use this Ether Vial.
Now here's Reflector Mage. He's going to bounce that Noble Hierarch, and Robert will not be able to replay it this coming turn. And he is able to get in for 4. Robert already down to 12. Well, there's a Kitchen Finks, and that is going to stem the bleeding here for Robert Graves. He gets back some Precious Life, and he can even put that in the path of the champion and then have it come back, gain a little bit more life.
Yeah, a card that does quite a bit of work here for Robert Graves. Robert Graves may even not want to block with the Kitchen Finks because he has Vizier of Remedies in his hand, and if he's able to assemble them together, then Kitchen Finks is kind of an infinite blocker.
Wow, just to give you an idea about the power of Reflector Mage, when your opponent just blocks, returns a Kitchen Finks to your hand, a card is good. He's not going to be able to play that. He will be able to replay the Noble Hierarch this turn.
Yeah, now already down to 9.
He's got 2 Kitchen Finks in hand.
And we see a Blood Moon here in Robert Graves' hand, and that's another reason why people choose to play Ether Vial in the human deck. Blood Moon, a very popular card in Modern, and when you're playing against Blood Moons and you're able to just drop things into play, it's much better than trying to cast them out of the wacky mana base that Humans has.
All right, here's a Walking Ballista. Now, for 1. Now, Justin is going to activate Ether Vial at the end of the turn. What are you expecting to see? Oh, how about a Phantasmal Image copying Reflector Mage, bouncing your Noble Hierarch, making my Champion of the Parish bigger. Wow.
Yeah, so this Walking Ballista is in chump mode, and Robert's still going to fall to 3 from this attack, and that's if nothing changes on board.
Yeah, this is just attack with everything here,
I imagine.
other than the Noble Hierarch, obviously. And he's going to use that counter to target the Phantasmal Image, which dies as soon as it's a very fragile creature. It dies as soon as you target it with a spell or ability. Justin cashes in a Horizon Canopy, plays a Thalia, and says go. Wow.
And just this chain of Reflector Mages has completely destroyed Robert Graves, who would have been able to play out his hand. He would have been doing a lot of exciting things. He's a Kiki Chord deck. He has some weird angles that his deck can play from, but when his mana creatures are getting bounced to his hand, he's not hitting land drops. He's casting things that cost 3 mana and then having them get returned to his hand. That's not going to work out well when your opponent is playing things for 1 mana that are attacking for 5.
Can he do any of those? Can he do any of those things from this position? Is he just dead to this board, or can he fight his way into a win? Is there any line you see him taking that's going to let him win right now?
To be honest, I do not see a line to victory from this situation.
So he's going to play a Kitchen Finks. He's going to play a Noble Hierarch, but he's at 4, and he's just losing on the numbers. There's a Kite Sail Freebooter, and that's going to be able to fly over and exalt. Yeah, he only had the 1 exalted, but whatever. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Justin just had the numbers. And Robert Graves is down a game here. All right, let's see what happens after game 1 here. Any sideboard options that stand out for Robert Graves?
Robert Graves is going to be bringing in a pair of Path to Exile and a pair of, and wait for it, super exciting, Fiery Justice.
Ooh, that is super exciting.
Yeah, Fiery Justice, for those of you at home who don't know, costs Naya and deals 5 damage divided as you choose between creatures and players, and then your opponent gains 5 life.
That's in Magic 25, right? Along with the.
Oh, is it?
Oh yeah, along with the guy who gets counters when your opponent gains life.
Kavu
Predator. Yeah,
there we go. And now,
nice start here for Robert Graves. Bird of Paradise into Devoted Druid. Now, how many lands does his deck run? Obviously, when you run so many mana creatures, you do tend to shave a few.
22, it looks like.
Okay.
So
he's going to play a Meddling Mage. We'll find out what he names. We've got the label maker ready.
Oh, and I think Robert Graves, with a tapped-out opponent, just drew Eldritch Evolution, which means that it is possible for him to find a Vizier of Remedies right now by sacrificing that Birds of Paradise.
Oh, wow. And then he can make infinite mana with his Devoted Druid.
Correct.
And the reason that works is because Devoted Druid wants you to put a -1/-1 counter on it when you untap it. But with the Vizier of Remedies, you reduce the number of -1/-1 counters by 1 each time. But you know what? Looks like he does not have the land there.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see what the Meddling Mage was naming.
Yeah, we haven't gotten the label yet.
Ooh, so here we have a Restoration Angel coming down.
And it is going to untap the Devoted Druid. I can't read that label on the Meddling Mage there. Can you read that?
I cannot, unfortunately. Yeah, so actually he could not. The Eldritch Evolution, you specifically have to find something that costs 2 more, so he could not actually search for the Vizier. Yeah.
Well, there's the Fiery Justice you mentioned.
That's pretty good.
And he is going to clean up. He's like, yeah, you know what, Justin, gain a little life. But I am going to clean up your board here and get in with my Restoration Angel. Wow.
Yeah, and Fiery Justice is also quite good against the Death Shadow decks. You oftentimes are able to kill a Tarmogoyf with the Fiery Justice itself, while also putting them up to a high enough life total where you kill their Death Shadows.
That's super sweet. By the way, that Restoration Angel, 1/2 of the combo that Robert Graves is trying to set up. We talked about the one other combo where he's able to make infinite mana, but right now he can make 3 red, which means he could play a Kiki Jiki, and that would be lethal. He can also Eldritch Evolution for a Kiki Jiki.
Yep, and
he's going to sacrifice
barring
his
a Dismember, that is going to be lethal. There could be a Dismember here, though.
All right, let's see. He's going to go. So he's got to get something that costs exactly 5.
Correct.
The Kitchen Finks comes back into play. from the Eldritch Evolution. Here's Kiki. Copies the Restoration Angel, and that's the game. Robert Graves pulls off the combo, makes Infinite Angel. So what happens is you tap the Kiki, you make a copy of Restoration Angel. Restoration Angel blinks Kiki. Untapped copy comes into play.
Correct. Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, it comes back into play itself, untapped, and then you just continue
do it
to do
over
that.
and over again.
Yeah. And you end up with infinite Restoration Angels. Here is turn 3 Mantis Riders, attack for 4. Turn 2, Mantis Rider, attack for 4 from Justin Baire.
Yeah, four power hasty flyers on turn 2 are pretty impressive.
Yes. Not necessarily the way Richard Garfield intended to be played. Although maybe he did. I don't know. He wanted to see a Serendipity Freed at least on turn 2. Yeah. He wanted you to go bird Serendipity Freed. So there we see Unclaimed Territory, naming human. And now Reflector Mage bouncing the Devoted Druid.
Yeah, and the Reflector Mages are really the most important cards in this matchup for Justin Baire, because if Justin Baire is just casting his cards and hoping to race Robert Graves has a lot of blocking potential in addition to just these really, really powerful things he does. Especially post-board when he has access to Fiery Justice, things get pretty rough for Justin. However, if he's able to Reflector Mage back cards like Devoted Druid, then Robert's going to be struggling just to stick those, to be able to untap with them. And until he's able to untap with a card like that, his deck does not do that much.
Well, Fiery Justice, by the way, not in Masters 25, just as a random aside from earlier. I was thinking of the gain 4 life kill a creature card that's in Masters 25 with Kavu.
Okay.
I knew someone killed me with a very large Kavu Predator, and I just assumed it was Fiery Justice. All right. Here is
Pia and Kieran
Alar.
And that's going to provide Robert Graves with quite a bit of time.
Yeah, gums up the board pretty considerably. He's like, yeah, if you want to bounce this with a Reflector Mage, I'm pretty happy to pick up my Pia and Kieran.
Yeah, it's just fine. He also can generate a really, really big Chord of Calling with that Pia and Kieran. That's something that is.
And he does have Chord of Calling in hand. Chord of Calling Restoration Angel, your Pia and Kieran.
So we have an attack here for 5. I'm interested to see whether or not Robert Graves chooses to block here, whether or not he wants to set up blocks next turn and then use those creatures to search up something with Chord of Calling. This isn't lethal, so he can, if he wants to, take this damage.
He's just going to block 1, go to 8, and try to get himself stabilized for his next turn.
And I like that. I think that it puts him in a good position here.
All right, there's an Aether Vial from Justin. One of the sort of downsides of Aether Vial, not always very exciting to draw on turn 4, turn 5.
Yeah, a card that has incredible potential when you draw it on the first turn of the game, but a very weak top deck later on in the game. Justin Baire already with enough mana to cast anything in his deck. Now, interesting situation here. That Chord that's in Robert Graves' hand. It's a lot of potential.
He can Chord for 4 here, right?
Correct.
Which would be Restoration Angel, reset my Pia and Kieran.
Yeah, so he could set up blocks here, block with the token and the Pia and Kieran, and then search up a Restoration Angel and blink that Pia and Kieran, get 2 more tokens, plus have the Restoration Angel in play. And I believe he has Kiki in hand.
He does have Kiki in hand. Okay, here is Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, and that is going to prompt Robert Graves to action because the Chord of Calling would cost 1 more. which would mean he could only chord for 3 here, which wouldn't let him set up the potential for a win next turn. So he has to respond to that Thalia. That's not in play yet, he says.
Yeah.
Just don't put that on the board like it's resolved or something. He's like, yep. And here you see taps 3 creatures to convoke, 4 mana, and he is going to be able to get a Restoration Angel and blink Pia and Kieran.
And now both those tokens will be on chump block duty.
Yeah, resets. And if Robert gets to untap with 5 mana and be able to make 3 red, he should be able to win this game.
Yeah, it's important to note, though, that Justin Baire does have Dismember post-board. He only has 1 copy, but just because you only have 1 doesn't mean you don't draw it. You put it in that sideboard so you can draw it in situations like this.
I feel like if he had it, he would use it right now.
Oh, the Dismember?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah. Do you want to let your opponent have some random thing when they untap?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, no, you're probably right. Might be why he's thinking, though.
All right, he's going to attack with the Mantis Rider. And Robert's like, all right, I'll block. I don't want to get into lightning bolt range. I don't think that's something you're going to do, but maybe.
Yeah, you never know.
And cards Robert's thinking about as he's going to untap. He's going to be thinking about Dismember. He's going to be thinking about Path to Exile.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Path to Exile can't happen. I think Dismember is really it because of the makeup of the Humans deck as of late. So,
all right.
Will he go for it? I imagine you got to go for it, right? You're playing against a deck that is, generally speaking, a pile of creatures and Ether Vials.
Does it get better next turn?
Yeah, I don't think it does.
Yeah. He is going to go for it. 5 mana. That bird providing the crucial 3rd red. There's Kiki Jiki. Taps it. Points it at his Restoration Angel. Makes a copy of Restoration Angel. Blinks. He does have the Dismember.
Oh.
He does. Justin Baire upsets the combo.
Wow.
With a 1 of sideboard card there. And Robert Graves. Wow. He only plays the 1 copy of Kiki Jiki, right?
Yeah, I believe he only has 1 Kiki Jiki.
Does he have any way to Eternal Witness that?
He does. He has multiple Eternal Witnesses. I don't know how many stay in his deck post-board against humans, for what it's worth. They're only blocking with a Thopter on that Mantis Rider, not choosing to double block there. Wants to save that Restoration Angel to do something else with it.
Wow.
Has access to quite a bit of mana here. Can Eldritch Evolution that Birds of Paradise into an Eternal Witness, which could return the Kiki Jiki. Can't quite cast the Kiki Jiki this turn in addition to that, but...
So here's another bird. Oh, no. Here's another bird.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to pay 4 mana for that Eldritch Evolution if he wants it. There's Devoted Druid. Wow. All right, Ether Vial ticks up to 3 here. Does Robert have enough time to recover from... All right. Well, Justin's like, I don't want to give you that much time, so I'm going to keep digging here. Sacrifice the Horizon Canopy, but wow, that Dismember was just brutal.
Justin found a really nice one, too. I believe Justin just found Thalia's Lieutenant.
Oh,
which means that he can start cracking for very large amounts of damage.
There's Thalia's Lieutenant. So he's going to, you see him sort of make that gesture like, I'm going to put counters on all my humans here.
How does that sound?
When Noble Hierarch's able to just swing in, too. So Thalia, Mantis Rider, and Reflector Mage all get in.
Now, Robert Graves with
Couple of good blocks here.
he had some good options too. It's worth noting that the PN Kieran Nallard does have an activated ability on it. Robert could block with the Thopter token and then before damage sacrifice the Thopter and get the Thalia off the table.
Wow.
The Restoration Angel cleanly deals with the Thalia as is, though.
All right. Robert Graves is going to get a chance to untap here. And he's cleaned up the Thalia, so he's got a little more operating mana than he did before.
And he may want to sacrifice these Heaths. He's going to untap with his Devoted Druid also.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, so 3. I think he's got the win. If he has an Eternal Witness left in his deck.
That's true.
He could have sideboarded them out, which I think is an entirely reasonable sideboard plan for what it's worth.
You're not expecting the one dismember for your Kiki Jiki?
Yeah.
I wonder how many times Robert Graves has cast Kiki Jiki and then not won.
Yeah, there's not a big 6 to search for off of his Restoration Angel. Sometimes decks like this will play a one of something like, Inferno Titan or the like, but it's not an option here for Robert.
Robert in the tank here. Again, he does have, you said 2 copies of Eternal Witness in his main deck,
yep.
But may have taken them out after sideboarding.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll find out now. Oh, okay. So he's going to go and get a 4 here.
Mm-hmm. Which leads me to believe that he does not have the Eternal Witnesses left in his deck.
Oh, he does have a Eternal Witness.
I think he actually needed to sacrifice the bird there.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is a recorded match.
Yeah. I mean, he could have done this either way. So
there's the Kiki Jiki comes back with the Eternal Witness. But
yeah, now there's an Aether Vial on 3, and wow!
Aether Vial on 3 is going to bounce the Kiki Jiki in response and disrupt it. And then Justin Baire is going to be able to take the win with the Humans deck. We talked about that late Aether Vial, and we're like, not a super exciting card at this stage of the game. You don't get to cheat things out early in the game, but you do still get to put these enter the battlefield trigger creatures into play at instant speed, maybe when your opponent's trying to combo you off.
Yeah, and I think Robert Graves, he may have had opportunities to try for that play maybe a turn before. I'm not sure what his opponent had in hand. His opponent could have already had that Reflector Mage. I'm not sure where the Aether Vial was in those places, but a really interesting game there. We watched him attempt to go infinite multiple times against the deck that has very minimal instant speed interaction, and he failed.
And Justin was like, I would like you to go finite.
Yeah.
Twice. Okay, sounds like we have more Time Walk action for you. We have Carolyn Kavanagh playing Jund versus Ben Weitz playing the Ironworks combo. I tell you, Caroline is part of the group of players at this Grand Prix, along with Ben Weitz and Sam Pardee and that whole crowd. So these two players know each other very well here at 9-2, and this is game 1, Jund versus Ironworks combo.
Now Jund, going to be trying to use its most disruptive elements, cards like Inquisition of Kozilek and Thoughtseize to pick apart Ben Weitz's hand, and then apply some pressure with things like Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant. It's really plan A here. Traditionally speaking, the Jund decks do pretty well against combo strategies. But
There's
I think
this-
it's different against the Ironworks combo for what it's worth.
There's
though.
the Scavenging Ooze. Pretty solid card against this combo deck.
Yeah, Carolyn, only with one green source in play. To really prevent comboing from happening with the Scavenging Ooze, you're going to need to leave open a few green sources.
Just a little clarification about Eldritch Evolution there. Just it's X or less, where X is 2 plus. So you can go up to 2 more, but you can go below that.
Correct.
So Ben has got his Inventor's Fair online.
He puts that dice on the top of his library so that he remembers to gain his 1 life during his upkeep from that Inventor's Fair. Very good tip there for newer players that have effects that are going to happen during their upkeep.
It's even a pretty good tip for stubborn older players.
Yeah. I do it. Dark Confidant, put something on the top of my deck. Any Pact. Sometimes you even just want to gain 1 life with your Inventor's Fair. You don't want to forget.
All right, here's the Thoughtseize from Carolyn. And she sees all the puzzle pieces there except for the crucial Krark Clan Ironworks. There's a Mirror Retriever. There's a Scrap Trawler.
And Scrap Trawler just has some really, really big upside here. Probably going to take that.
And Scavenging Ooze is going to get in. Carolyn can eat that Scrap Trawler when she wants to with her Scavenging Ooze, but also wants to keep her mana open. She has cards like Fatal Push and Dismember in hand, and she wants to be able to have access to those and can just eat some stuff out of the graveyards at the end of turn. And that's exactly what happens here.
Yeah, her deck can interact quite a bit in game 1, whereas a lot of opponents cannot at all. Ben here, plenty of mana to work with. Has that Inventor's Fair. Probably waiting for Carolyn to tap down to a somewhat small amount of mana.
And to maybe somehow lose that Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah.
It's a little tricky for his deck to operate without being able to return things from the graveyard.
Exactly, and I think that Carolyn is correctly recognizing that and thinking to herself, okay, well, is it the best plan of action for me to not apply more pressure and to simply prevent my opponent from doing much of their graveyard by having 2 forests available to exile things from graveyards? Because here she does have the option of targeting something with Maelstrom Pulse or the like. She could play more threats to the board. Maelstrom Pulse, not the best, considering all these things could just be sacrificed to different abilities.
Well, here's a third Mind Stone. Also, third version of Mind Stone.
Yeah. Now, some of you at home may think, oh, well, Maelstrom Pulse could deal with 3 Mind Stones at once. That's pretty good. But that's not how it works, because Ben Weitz could pay 1 mana, sacrifice the Mind Stone she targets, draw a card, and the Maelstrom Pulse would no longer have a target and would be countered, and the other 2 would survive.
And you would draw a card, which is all that is life in Magic.
Yes. You're up a card in that interaction. And that's how you win. You get up a card, and then you get up another card, and eventually you win, right?
Yes. All right, well, Carolyn just going to work here with this Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, Ben, though, he's not under a ton of pressure, and as a result, he's happy to sit here and not really draw extra cards necessarily. Wants to wait all until 1 turn so that Carolyn's only going to have a couple interactions or a couple activations of that Scavenging Ooze.
All right. So explain to people who haven't seen this Ironwork combo and play before, what has Ben ultimately looking to do here?
So Ben can cast Clarkline Ironworks, sacrifice any artifact he has in play to add 2 mana to his mana pool. In doing so, he's going to be drawing a lot of cards by sacrificing things like Chromatic Star and or Terrarion or Ichor Wellspring. And eventually he'll draw Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, and he'll have plenty of mana to cast it.
By the way,
and win the game.
Carolyn's got to be careful because Ben is also getting very close to the point where he can just play an Ironworks, and if he draws an Emrakul, can just play the Ironworks, sacrifice enough artifacts. You know, again, each of those Mind Stones represents 3 mana with a Clarkline Ironworks. And here we go. You see he's cashing in his Inventor's Fair for that Ironworks.
Yeah, and important to note that this is the turn where he might be trying to go off, but Carolyn does have 3 Scavenging Ooze activations, and it's not going to be easy for Ben to go off through all of that.
But if Ben just sacrificed all his permanents and hard casts Emrakul the Aeon's Torn.
Oh yeah, that would absolutely work. He could do that right now. He has plenty of artifacts to pull that off. He just needs it in hand. Like right now, he just sacrifices all of his artifacts. If he sacrifices the Clarkline Ironworks too, I mean that's 18 mana before he even taps a Mind Stone for mana.
You're counting the 2 Citadels too?
Yep.
So here comes the second copy of Ironworks. And again, that's the copy he fetched, right?
Yep.
He's just playing it. So, but now this does give, also is going to give Carolyn a window for her Maelstrom Pulse to do something.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Maelstrom Pulse sorcery, and Ben might end up tapping down pretty low.
I'm just thinking she's going to use it on Ironworks.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I think Ben's going to try to go off this turn, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think that I don't think Ben would expose the Ironworks to something like Maelstrom Pulse here.
How about a Colligan's Command?
Well, it's hard to not expose it to an instant.
So here we see he's keeping track of his artifact, of his mana. Can he find an Emrakul?
That may be his game plan here.
Did he just find one?
I think so.
He's adding it up.
He's
just found an Emrakul.
Yep. So this is so exciting. All right, that's 6 mana. Yeah, you have it, Ben. It's there.
You get to tap and sack those Mind Stones. Those are 3 mana each.
Mm-hmm. You're already up to 12.
He's just double checking.
I mean, he's got well more than enough.
This is a classic pants down scenario here.
14 mana. I'll tap one of these Mind Stones.
Discards a Grove of the Burn Willows to the Colligan's Command. And Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. I'll take another turn after this one if you don't mind. Oh, by the way, I'm also going to play this Mirror Retriever.
Yeah, and
I'm going to take my second turn now.
Put you down to 2. You'll have no permanents left. Go ahead. And that was unbelievably exciting, right? Like, the deck needs the graveyard to combo. Carolyn did an incredible job. She kept open mana. She had the Scavenging Ooze. She was like, my opponent cannot combo off. And it didn't matter. Ben just was able to naturally draw his Eldrazi and had enough artifacts in play that he just produced a huge amount of mana, and the game ended.
So game 2, we see an Inquisition of Kozilek, looks at a hand of Engineered Explosives, Mind Stone, Wellspring, Terrarion, and Mishra's Bauble.
Now, Ben got pretty lucky there, for what it's worth. There's only 1 copy of that card in his deck. He drew the only
Emrakul?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I can't tell you that Ben Weitz did not run out of good fortune after ripping his single copy of Emrakul in Game 1. He does win Game 2 as well, and that is the last result for the round. So we've got more Magic coming to you, but it won't be until round 13, which is coming up as soon as we are ready with our commercial messages, which is right now.